Okay, guys. So this was a shir I gave a few years ago in Toronto, which I think I meant to do it as an Agadat shir last year because I wanted a chance to really hash it out. I had given it in sort of an abbreviated half-hour version. Then we did Toronto. One of the very nice things that they did at the Bayit, which is the shul that I worked at, was what they called a tikkun yom. But basically, because in Toronto, Shkia and Seis are so late, so
how late is it?
What? So you don't get back from shul till after 10 o'clock at night on the first night of Shavuos. Like I'm telling you, the year I got married, so we still had Shavuos shower brachos in Toronto. I was Ray Wasserman and I were commiserating because we got married the same day. So like we both had the same like insanity of Shavuos shower brachos, except I was in Toronto, so it was even later. So the second night of shower brachos, just because of when you get back from shul, shower brachos ended at 1:30 in the morning. It was, and I stayed up all night the first night because I gave shir at 2 in the morning. It was like, oh, whatever. But because of that, so like you can't. It's bakosha. You can get back to shul for the midnight shir. So like staying up all night is like it's ridiculous. It's like you bakosha get to shul at 12:30 at night. And that's if you rushed your meal. From when you finish your meal, like you won't be, if you had fleishiks, you will not be able to have cheesecake until after Shachar. So it's like, it's whatever. So they do, but the flip side is that the afternoon is endless. So they have this like several hour limud in the afternoon, like a series of shirim, which is really fun. So I'd given this then, and when I had basically just started formulating my thoughts on it. So I want your opinion on it. So this is a shir I called Better in Bavel. And I think it's also a good shir to do. I think I planned to do it last year. I don't remember why I didn't, as the last shir of the year also. But as at least some of you are going back, and those of you who aren't going back, much of it is because the balance of where it's easier to be between Israel and Chutz La'aretz has suddenly been shattered because the world is upside down.
By the time it was close, my mother was in the U.S. It's much easier to be there. There? Yeah. I'm kidding. If I was here, my mother would be calling.
Oh, for you.
Not being there the whole time.
But and as people really reassess, there's been an unprecedented number of but there's been a huge spike in the numbers of Aliyah applications, as always happens around things like this. It's apparently particularly striking right now because people reassess their values about where they want to be. And what I want to do is go through some Agadatot and show you how some of the complexities of the relationship between Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael and the communities they're in. And literally, if you go online, you will see that in the last few weeks, everyone is writing articles on this constantly because they're writing about how the relative values will have to shift as the financial stability of the different communities changes, and as the governmental power changes. And I saw an article today that by Ronen Neuwirth that Israel should not have shut its borders to Jews. They should have encouraged them to come and make Aliyah. And you still can. I was very confused by the article because you're allowed to make Aliyah, but weather the storm here as a lot of the support systems in Chutz La'aretz collapse. I mean, people are like rethinking this, and it's this very weird. We have a weird relationship. Right, the communities in Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael really have a weird relationship. It's this combination of sometimes we say, sometimes people, a lot of times people in Chutz La'aretz will be like, oh, Eretz Yisrael is holier, but America is better for this, and this reason. There it's scary. Here finances are better, whatever. And now the world has flipped, and now everyone is asking us, oh, you have family in New York? Are they okay? And the world has gone, right? Everything is very strange. But this is not new, and that's what I want to analyze with you. Is I want to try to understand in Chazal how they view the complexity of these communities, and then maybe try to figure out what they're getting at, what they're doing, and see if we can maybe gain insight in this time when I think the global communities. I keep getting this ad for some reason on Facebook. I don't know why. I don't even want to guess how the algorithms work here, but it's about someone, and I have not opened it yet, but it keeps saying like what American and Israeli Jews can do to end their cringy relationship, right? And it's basically, we don't owe each other anything. Like, we have a relationship, but like we have this weird thing, like constantly. It's like, oh, American Jews, we feel guilty that we're there. They're in Eretz Yisrael, so we should support them. And people in Eretz Yisrael are like, well, we're the Holy Land, so like we really should help. What?
What should we do?
I don't know. If the Jewish Agency has like offices all around the world, like we send I don't know. We send. It's legitimate for one of your years in the army or Sherut Leumi to go and teach in like some Hebrew day school in like South Carolina because that's apparently what the Israeli government is vested in. Like, right? Like we have this very weird relationship in how we support each other. Like we are, who's helping who? We never know. We're always changing our mind. We constantly have an inferiority and superiority complex at the same time, right? Like it's like right. Olim consistently both feel inferior because they aren't like born here and they haven't integrated society, but superior because of all the things that we think are better that we brought from the culture in Chutz La'aretz, right? This is not new. But my claim in this year is that it's not just us who had this bizarre relationship, and I want to get some insight because I think that this was happening a bit in the time of Chazal as well. So let us go through the Gemara, okay?
A year or two before this.
What?
Just a little bit before this whole thing started.
Well, what?
Oh, that was, a year or two before this whole thing started. A little bit.
Okay, so let's go through the stories here, okay? This is basically, let's see, I don't think I have a single secondary source here. At the end I have a little bit, but basically this is all primary sources, so let's analyze it together, okay? So, Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Shchiva Le Barta. So Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda's daughter died. Amru Le Rabbanan Le Ula. So the Rabbanan said to Ula, Kum Nezel Ninchame. Let's go and do Nichom Avelim. Let us. I have finished copies. I can print more on my phone's inside. I'm going to share for now, I guess. Yeah. So he says, can we? We should go do Nichom Avelim, right? We should console him. And Ula says very harshly, Amar Le, my itli gabe nechamda di bavloi di gidufo. He says, right. I have nothing to do with the Nichom Avelim of those Babylonians. It is heresy. Right? When they try to comfort people, it's just heretical. Ew. The Amri my efshar lemevad, ha efshar lemevad avdi. Because what do they say? They have this like thing. What should we have done? Oh, woe to us. Implying that if there was something you could have done, you would have done it. Which means that they want to contradict what God did. Ugh. These koifrim apikorsim from Bavel. Ugh. I'm not even going with the Babylonians to do Nichom Avelim. Okay? So here you have Ula. And Ula, in this story, right, what is his attitude towards Bavel? He's from Eretz Yisrael. What? Oh my God. It's like, right, it's like he won't, just think about it. He won't go with them to do Nichum Avelim. Because he's like, when they think they're comforting people, they're spewing heresy. Like that is the most right? We are Eretz Yisrael people, and those people, we are the religious aristocracy, and they are plebeian, barbarian, ignoramuses. They don't even realize.
Masses.
What?
The unwashed masses.
Yeah. That's Ula in Bava Kama. Okay? Let's look at Ula in Bracha Lamed Chet. The Gemara says, Rabotenu ha-Yordin me-Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara is going through a list of people who have nicknames. So like Achirim is Rabbi Meir, things like that. So Ula had a nickname also. And what was his name?
Ula sounds like a nickname.
His name is his name is actually Ula. His nickname is Rabotenu ha-Yordin me-Eretz Yisrael. The rabbis who come from Israel to Bavel, who go down. Umanu Ula.
Why is it the rabbis and it's talking about just Ula?
So it's Manu Ula Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan, right? It's Ula when he's quoting the statements of Rabbi Yochanan. That is Rabotenu HaYordan Eretz Yisrael. Okay? And then they give an example. Omar shlakot mevarchim al shahakol ne'abidvaro v'ani omar kol shechol bar pri adama sholko shahakol ne'abidvaro v'kol shechol ne'abidvaro sholko bar pri adama. The specific halacha was about brachot, about cooking. When is it hadama? When is it shahakol? Okay, fine. Then the Gemara says, "In Chavireinu hayardim Eretz Yisrael." He actually had two nicknames. Our friend who comes from Eretz Yisrael, Umanu Ula Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan. So now we have an interesting thing. In the first one, what do we know about Ula?
He hates both.
Oh my God! Right? He can't even tolerate them. You learn the Gemara in Brachot. He lives in Eretz Yisrael and he frequents Bavel so often that there are two separate nicknames that always mean Ula when he quotes Rabbi Yochanan. And that's how specific. He was there often enough quoting Rabbi Yochanan, often enough that he got two separate Talmudic nicknames. Which, yes, Rabotenu, our rabbis, is always Ula quoting Rabbi Yochanan every single time. Right? Twice. Rabotenu and Chavarenu. So, there's this thing that if I just stopped here, I'll be honest, that I have this, I mean, maybe this is, you tell me, maybe this is a bit irreverent of me, but you just read these Gemaras and will support this. Ula seems to me to be the epitome of the person with the complex relationship with he is, I know this is irreverent and I probably should not even say it, but I'll say it anyways. And Ula will forgive me, or God will forgive me, and hopefully everyone will forgive me for what I'm about to say. But I almost feel like Ula is like, I tended to meet these people sometimes. People who did shlichut like many times because they really loved being in Chutz La'aretz, but they didn't admit it to themselves, so they'd spend their entire time on shlichut telling everybody how you're bummed because you live in Chutz La'aretz and you have to make aliyah. But in the meantime, and they justify doing shlichut over and over again because they're going to convince people to make aliyah, but really they're doing it because they really like being in Chutz La'aretz, but they can't admit that to themselves, right? Like they have this very weird, complex relationship where, like, literally they've done shlichut like 6 times, right? And they've spent like a good percentage of their adult life teaching in Chutz La'aretz, but like b'shita, they keep their accent as strong as possible, right? And like tell people about how much better it is in Israel, and like, and it's this weird relationship because on the one hand they really do believe it's better in Eretz Yisrael, and part of them is really trying to tell people, you should make aliyah, and part of the reason they go to shlichut is because they really like the community in America or Canada or Australia, and they really want to be there, right?
You could think that it's better in Eretz Yisrael and just like the specific community outside of Israel more.
Correct, but I'm saying, but it's this weird, complex relationship because, we like to divide the world, right? There are the people who just like, we like to say it's very simple. Like, certain people are just diehard Zionists, and they go to Eretz Yisrael, and they think it's better, and they just move, and that's it, right? And even if they left certain things behind, zil, right? And then there are people who either aren't at all, they don't care, and they stay in Chutz La'aretz, right? Or people who say, I'd love to move to Israel, but I can't because X, Y, and Z. But the reality is it's much messier. That like there are people in Eretz Yisrael who like have this complex relationship with Chutz La'aretz where they really do think it's better in Israel, but there are certain things they really like about Chutz La'aretz, and they admit it, they don't admit it, they comment on the one hand, they look up to it, oh my God, you have so much money, you have beautiful communities, you have communities, in Eretz Yisrael we don't have strong shul communities, and they come back and like they move to the Yeshuvim that have like strong Anglo presence so that they'll live amongst like Anglo-style shuls in Israel, but they don't want too many Anglos because then they only speak English, right? It's like this very,
I'm being Shemesh, would not believe that one.
No, but like, it's this funny thing that like, even where I live, right, it's like the majority of my community in Efrat is not Olim. The majority are second generation people from Efrat. Because it's like, we're the children of Anglos, so we don't want to be amongst Americans, but we want an American-style shul. So like, because we learned the value of like an American-style shul from our parents, but we grew up here. So like, right, there's this, and Ula seems to be, right, it's like the scholar in residence or shliach who like keeps going back to Eretz Yisrael and screams at people about how they aren't making aliyah, right? Like, again, I know this is irreverent, but at some level, right, you see a complexity, right? And if you see the next one is like, look at the next Gemara, okay? And this is like incredible. This is Gemara in Tainim. Ula ikla Bavel. Ula once went to Bavel, as he was wont to do, as we know. Chaza porchot. He saw clouds that were flying overhead. Amar luhu pinu mane. Dahasha ati mitra. And he said to everyone, look, put away your kalim, put away your strollers, your outdoor furniture, because it's about to rain. L'sov lo ati mitra. The rain didn't come. Amar, he goes and he yells at the clouds, and he says, Ki heichi de mishakre bavloi, just like the Babylonians are a bunch of liars, hachi mishakre mitrayu, their rain also lies. Right? It's almost comical, right? He's like angry at the weather, right? And Ula, another story, Ula ikla Bavel, chaze malitzana de tamre bezuzah. Now this story is incredible, okay? And this, I think, captures the complexity that Chazal are trying to get at. And, again, it's all Ula. I think Ula is a good way of getting into this. Ula another time came to Bavel, and he went to buy dates, honey dates. And he bought them a full basket for a dinar, which was really cheap. Right? Mali tzani de tamre bezuzah. And he said, Omar, Mali tzana de duvsha bezuzah, Bavloi lo aski ba'raita. This mifunak food, right? This really expensive luxury item is dirt cheap. And they don't learn Torah. Right? You hear this sometimes. Right? People are like, oh, it's so hard financially in Israel. In America, they make salaries, 5 times what we're doing, and why aren't they, right? He indulges, right? What happens? What happens if you have too many dates? Yes. Bidyuk. Bililia, the Gemara is very adin here. It's very, very... Bilai, let's see, Aru. At night, it caused him some pain, some discomfort. He woke up the next morning and said, Amar, Molei tzana de sakina bezuza ubavloi askoi ba'raita. These basket full of knives is so cheap, and people manage to learn anything? Right? Now, this story is, I think, beautiful, because this story... Right? Again, this is all Ula. But think about it. This is like a sort of comical mashal of how so many people, so many Israelis I know, think about America. Right? What do? They say, oh, Americans are so lucky. If I lived in America and my salary was, a quarter, whatever, was a $200,000 or whatever they think Americans are making, $250,000, right? Oh, I'd have so much time for family. I'd be able to learn more. And here, I'm struggling. What?
A lot of them move to America.
And a lot of them make Yeridah. Then what happens when they get to Chutz La'aretz? Not all of them. Some of them will say, wait a second. They make $200,000, but then they give, by the time they finish taxes and, let's just talk about frum Jews for a second, and they have 4 kids and they pay $100 and God knows what $1,000 to tuition, and they have to pay health care because it's not socialized, and then they're like, oh my God, how do people in Chutz La'aretz make ends meet, right? Because
that's just American Chutz La'aretz.
What?
Yeah. That's talking about
okay, in Canada it's a little bit different also, but I understand. But in first of all, in Canada, tuition's not as expensive, and they do have healthcare, which is why there's a lot of Canadians who move to Canada, because it is more similar in that sense. Well, Israelis who married to move to Canada, but then they get to Toronto and they're like, oh, real estate is so cheap in Chutz La'aretz, and they get to Toronto and they're like, no, there are places if you want to move to
the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Toronto is like a square foot is like,
Okay, that's expensive. But
you have no idea. Toronto is insane. It's crazy. What?
Texas.
You can, sure, but it's always the funniest thing because they'll be like, I moved there for the Parnassa, and then suddenly it's like, oh right, but a 30, 40-year-old co-op apartment is, and these are actual numbers that I know from this year, in the middle of everything, in Toronto, is $600,000 plus $1,000 a month co-op fees, even if you own. Right?
Canadian dollars.
What?
Canadian dollars.
Yeah, so it's 15 cents. I get it. Okay, that's not the point. But what?
More in Israel, shall I? More than that.
I'm saying, if you go to Tel Aviv is more dollar for dollar. But I think this Gemara, right? But this Gemara captures it very well, right? That Ula himself on the exact same food, right? One day he says, oh my God, in Chutz La'aretz they're so rich, why aren't they frum enough? Right? Meaning, people who would say, look, in America they make 2.5 times what I do. I work 50 hours a week, right? If I was in Chutz La'aretz, I should just work, part-time, make the same money, and I'd have so much time to do. I'd have free time. I'd have Sundays. Oh, I could spend time with my kids, right? And then, right, they get there, and suddenly they realize, wait, you mean you manage to work and go to shul and learn some Torah even though you're paying tuition? Right? Like, this is literally the conversation, right? Right? This is like the conversation I have with Israelis. It's like, oh, it's so much easier in Chutz La'aretz, and they're like, oh, well, maybe it's actually harder in Chutz La'aretz, maybe I'm happier here, right? And sometimes and I think the Gemara is actively like telling you Ula's complex biographical story with Bavel, because this is not just a relationship that Ula has, right? This is what, right? If you notice, so far I haven't yet showed you. It hasn't been a survey of Chazal. This is just Ula, right? And, again, it might be a little bit irreverent, but I sort of see, like, the Ula personality who is always visiting Chutz La'aretz, right? But every time he's in Chutz La'aretz, sometimes he just insults the culture there, and sometimes he, goes in back and forth, and, within a 24-hour period, he can be like,
how horrible are they?
How horrible are they? It's so easy there, and they're not good enough. And the next day, they'll be like, oh, there are challenges I didn't process. Right? And again, it does it with a little bit of humor, right? Maybe crude humor, as things would go, yes. But it does capture, I think, a sentiment. And I think the Gemara is trying to do that for you, is to recognize that these relationships are often, if not always, complex in these ways. That there are things which seem easier and which are not. Things that seem harder that are not, right? Hidden problems in both places, right? And there's something moshech. And then, right, it's this complexity.
I actually kind of really like this source of tennis, because these two stories together, you see Ula going to Bavel and realizing things don't work the same in Bavel, and then instead of adjusting and coastally, he just yells at the clouds and tries to continue doing the same thing.
Correct. And then
he realizes when it actually it kind of hits him in the second story.
Yeah, and now, and we're not even done with Ula, right? We're just going to trace Ula for a little bit. So look at number 4. This is a Gemara in Pesachim. The Gemara says, Ula Amar, Kedei sheyochlu timarim v'yasku. The Gemara is in a discussion of why did we go to Galus, specifically in Bavel. What's Ula's answer? So that they would be able to eat the dates and learn Torah. Ikla Pumpadita, and he once went to Pumpadita, and his host gave him a basket of these dates.
Very similar to the others.
Well, it's interesting. Meaning here, Ula takes that same thing, and it's not just he eats them, but he actually
Praises them?
What?
Praises them?
Well, think about it. This is what shows the complexity. This is the opposite of the previous story. Because what did he say? In the previous story, what did he say?
These dates are knives.
No, that's the second half of the previous story. The first half of the previous story was they have such luxury and they don't learn Torah. But what does he say in this statement?
So they can learn Torah.
No, God sent them to Bavel to enable them to learn Torah. Now, does that mean that... So how do you read the stories together? Was it that he said they should be learning Torah because luxuries are so cheap, because everyone's so wealthy, and then he got there so they weren't learning Torah, and said, Gavalt, they're giving up in this opportunity, and then he said, oh, you know what, there are hidden costs, right? Or do you say, no, this is actually later, right? That originally he said they're not learning Torah, and then he comes to appreciate the amount of Torah they actually are learning, and says they were sent to Bavel because it enabled. Which order? We don't even know, right? All we know is that Ula has this developing relationship where he's constantly thinking about what is it about that culture that enables, makes it harder to be an Oved Hashem, but he's thinking about this constantly. He is this Ben Eretz Yisrael who's constantly visiting and assessing what exactly is the spiritual nature of Chutz La'aretz. And it's interesting that if you look in the Yerushalmi says that Omar b'Chanina Kodol Rabban Shana Shelo Galu Yisrael leBavel Natu Tamarim beBavel Ayidei Shiyu Lehutim Achar Metika Shimargel Elashon Lotar. Chanina And the Yerushalmi says that the Jews went to Bavel 40 years before the actual destruction, so that they would plant date palms, so when they would get there, they would get used to sweetness, which would get them in the mood for Torah. Right? You have the statement from Hanina that it's not just that it enables them to learn Torah, but something about the luxury of Eretz Yisrael, of Chutz La'aretz, actually enabled them to learn Torah. Right? Now, I don't know if he literally means sweetness, but there's a certain level at which this is true, right? There are certain cultural things that I think the wealth of Chutz La'aretz enables Chutz La'aretz Jews to do better, right?
Spend however much money it takes to get their kids to all contational for a year,
or whatever, right? Or even so think about it in Israel. If you think about which are the shuls that have the most active learning programs in their shuls, like the American Olim who brought their culture and in many cases wealth with them, like places like Ohel Hari in Ra'anana, which has like shiurim round the clock, has an Eretz Chemda Kollel and like matan associated with it, and there's like mamish iyun learning programs like round the clock, right? Because there is a certain level at which that type of culture enables Talmud Torah. It's also right. It also can be a distraction, but it can also enable. And there's this. We're still not done with Ula. That was a side point of Chanina. But look, the Gemara in Ketubot Kuf Yud Aleph tells you the tragic end, and this is right. And watch how this story ends. And again, I don't think it's been Mikra, because remember, there's a. Let me explain what I'm about to say with contrast. Rav Pinchas of Kuritz, who is a Hasidic Rebbe, has a how do I say this nicely? A statement that it's obviously wrong. I'm just going to say it that way. Obviously wrong. And he says it is clear that the only words that ever came out of the mouths of the imahot and the avot and all that are the words that you find in Chumash. Now this is obviously wrong, right?
What?
Yes.
I didn't speak to
I don't know. This is not right. Rather, the only words that we find out from them are what? But why are they there? They're the ones that matter. The Torah is trying to paint a story. So same in Shuv Chazal. We don't know everything Ula ever said in his life, but the picture that Chazal are clearly trying to paint of Ula is supposed to be educational, because there are plenty of things we don't know about Ula. What do we know about Ula?
That he would go from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel.
Yes, and now how did his life end? So his life ended basically how you might expect it. Ula have a rugel have a saluk Eretz Yisrael. Ula would often go to Eretz Yisrael from time to time, right? Yes. So by this point, correct. So it's not clear. Was he living in Eretz Yisrael and he came to Chutz La'aretz a lot? Was he living in Chutz La'aretz and he constantly went back to Eretz? Right. In this Gemara, it sounds like he lived at some point in his life. Actually, lived in Bavel, right? So it's unclear, right? Does that mean that he's right? From this Gemara, you would say he is based in Bavel, but feels guilty about it and constantly goes to Eretz Yisrael to bring back their Torah, right? Or it could be that he moved at some point. I don't know, right? Unclear to me. But he died in Chutz La'aretz. Okay? Atu Amar Lazar Amar Ant Ula Al Adama Tameya Tamut. They told Elazar, and he said, "Woe to Ula, because you died in unclean land." Amrulo Aronova. They said, but don't worry, he's coming to be buried in Eretz Yisrael after he's dead.
Wait, wasn't he in Chutz La'aretz?
He died in Chutz La'aretz, right? So he said Gevalt. He died in so they said, but don't worry, they're going to bury him in Eretz Yisrael in Harazesim, right? Amr lahem eino doma kalatam echaim lakotatam micha. Too bad. Right? It is not as valuable to be buried in Eretz Yisrael as dying in Eretz Yisrael. Hahu gavra tenavle yavama bechazayid like meruchanin amar leimala mechaz leyavma amar lei ach echev nasa kutit umeid baruch hamakam shahara go v'hu yired acharav. And once the Gemara is criticizing people who go to Chutz La'aretz, it says that there was a certain man who had a Yavama, right? meaning her husband died childless. So the Yavama was living in Bavel, and they asked him, should the woman go from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz to fulfill the mitzvah d'oraita of Yibam? And what did he say? What did Chanina say? No, the brother was a Rasha. God killed him for being in Chutz La'aretz, and you should send this woman to join, right, this person in this land of death, right? Forget it. So if you just stop there, right, you would see like Ula's, unfortunate end, right? He's this person who doesn't really have a good relationship. He has this bizarre relationship with Chutz La'aretz, and he dies in Chutz La'aretz. So then he thinks, well, he'll finish his life in Eretz Yisrael. And what do they say? Doesn't really help. You died in Chutz La'aretz, you're stuck.
Can we just go the other side? So this one is just good.
No, whatever. What happened? I don't know. Or tell him to come. Or tell him to come.
And her
brother-in-law lived in Chutz La'aretz.
Oh, okay.
And her husband, I don't know, had gone and done business. I don't know.
She's dead.
So if you just stop there, you would say the Gemara is very down on this Chutz La'aretz business, and it's saying, Ula, whatever, who went back and forth in whatever direction, right? He got what he deserved at some level. Like he died in Chutz La'aretz, and you can't really make that up, right? Like if you believe what you say, stay where you are. Right? That seems to be the undertone here, right? Is if you really have this complex relationship, but you really love Eretz Yisrael, and you're really down in Chutz La'aretz, so stay there. Stay in Eretz Yisrael. Don't, right? So if I stop right there, you would say that's the message. Except what's the next line in the Gemara? Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel Kishem she'asur latzeit me'eretz Yisrael leBavel kach asur latzeit miBavel l'shar Ararat. So, just like it's asur to leave Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, it's asur to go from Bavel to other lands, right? Which already tells you, wait a second, Bavel has a certain status, right? Rabbi Yosef Travaya Filim Pumbadita Lebe Kubai. Right? He says even within areas within Bavel, and later on in the Gemara it actually says that according to some it's the other way around. It's problematic to go from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael because Yuchsin is actually purer in Bavel, which I don't know why I cut off that line. But Yuchsin lineage, because when Ezra came up, who came with him? The dregs of society, which meant that the better parts of society stayed in Bavel. And the truth is that if you look in, you find this in Yechezkel also, right? The people who were nigla early to Chutz La'aretz, right, in the first round of Galut, they thought that they were lost. And what does Hashem tell them through Yechezkel? No, the people in Eretz Yisrael are going to be killed, and you're going to be the ones who are going to revive Judaism in Bavel. So this Gemara, as you continue, gets a little bit complex because Bavel. It's not so bad. It has a status, right? There are places, there are distinctions. There's, Chutz La'aretz in general, and there's New York. There's a Chalais, there's Borough Park, Kedushas Hamakom, whatever, Lakewood.
So let's just take this entire Gemara into the picture. So the guy wasn't allowed to go to marry the woman because she was in Bavel. The woman wasn't allowed to leave Bavel to go to Eretz Yisrael because he was pure in Bavel.
No. So this Gemara is saying the husband presumably could have come to Eretz Yisrael in this case. Right? You have Rabbi Yehuda's position that it might even be the other way. But what you do see is that the Gemara is playing with this, right? There's a certain level of a recognition of Bavel, but on the other hand, now this weird relationship is not just in Torah. And again, I mamish hear this in modern ears, right? How Americans and Israelis and Chutznikim in general and Israelis, it's not just important things. We also have this weird sniping relationship with each other on every little thing, what you eat, how you talk. Are you you use the finger thing, right? No, rega, oh, they're so rude, right? Oh, you Americani, oh, mifunak, right? We have this weird relationship with each other. This is not new. Look at the Gemara, right? Number 7. Masnisin delokia gabavloi. Our Mishnah is not like the Babylonians. Damar Rebzera bavloi tipshai dachli lachma ben lachma. Right? Rebzera even insults the people in Bavel because of what they eat. Oh, they eat porridge with bread, idiots. Who would eat bread on bread? Oh, they don't know how to eat. Right? It's oh, you're not eating the hummus right. It's like this,
That sounds like ad hominem.
What?
That sounds like ad hominem.
Aino Hanami. Right? And then look at this Gemara in Yoma. Amru kamei de Rabbi Yirmiyah. Amar. Right, they said Rabbi Yirmiyah. Bavloi tipshoi mishum didairi ba'ira dechashocham rishmaitzah demachashchen. This is ad hominem. They quoted a halacha from Bavel to Rabbi Yirmiyah, and he said, foolish Babylonians, they live in the land of darkness, so they say darkened things. Right, like, Amar le Rav Hashik Hardlan Tipshoi, V'Hashik Tipshoi de Tipshoi, the Kamagrin Lahu V'lo Gmirei. And Rava is self-conscious, because if you continue in the sugya, he said, until now they used to think that we were foolish, and now they'll call us the foolish of the foolish, because they'll say that we teach them and they don't even learn. Right? Meaning, it's not just the people in Chutzlar, in Eretz Yisrael have this relationship, but the people in Bavel have this like weird inferiority complex going on, right? In Bavel, right? They've like internalized it, right? Which is, you sort of see this also, right?
So
at this point,
what? If people in Bavel say they're worse, what do we call the Bavel?
It's a good question. Not for now.
Ask about Hirschberg.
What?
Ask about Hirschberg.
I mean, I can give shir on it also, but not right now. Then I will never finish what I'm doing. Okay, let's try to get through some of these other stories. But again, I think, this shir is more for me, right, descriptive in the sense that Chazal are trying. Let me get the point out now, and then we'll read some more Gemara. But I think that the point here is why they weren't telling us this, right? And I think, as I said, they weren't telling us this because this is like a complexity that's inherent in the existence of multiple centers of Jewish experience, some within and some without Eretz Yisrael, where often those that were in Chutz La'aretz were better off economically, security-wise, and often in Torah because of that. But on the other hand, Jews, as Jews, we inherently believe that Eretz Yisrael is important, and that there's a superiority there. And this creates this complex relationship, and I think if nothing else, the Gemara is validating that. Right? Saying, this is not the first time it happened. If you just looked at Ula's personality alone, you would realize that type of complex relationship existed in the time of Chazal. And I think that's important to try to manage it, because this is what we need to do to get along when there are multiple centers of Jewish community, right? And look, we know how hard it is. This is not theoretical. I think you all know people who, like Israelis, who on the one hand will go back and forth between saying, "Oh, Americans," and saying, "Oh, it's so great in America. It's so good for you." Oh, but wait, what?
Yes, sir. What?
He's Israeli. I don't know what you're saying.
How was that a call out?
What?
That was unnecessary.
And sometimes it's up, and it gets really right. And you have, and sometimes the complexity is most among people who travel back and forth. Right? I always find it funny, like my sister, ideological Zionist. My sister has no trouble. After college, she came here, did the army. She doesn't care. She could stay here. She doesn't need to visit America. She doesn't care, right? My brother-in-law made Aliyah at 11, and he's sometimes I just need a break from Israelis, right? I need to go to America. I need to have Dunkin' Donuts, right? And it's this funny thing. My sister, it's I grew up there. I know what it's like. If I don't go for a few years, big deal. Everyone should make Aliyah. Right? And my brother-in-law who's been living here for 25 years is I love it here, but Israelis, why can I go to, they don't have Dunkin' Donuts, and it's the silliest things, right? Right? But this is,
You don't have Dunkin' Donuts either.
Sorry.
Yeah. What do you have in Manchester?
Sadness.
Yeah.
When I went to Manchester, it was Dafka very nice. It was very nice. So again, my theory, guys, my theory, and you can add to it, because like I said, this is for me a work in progress. My working theory is that Chazal shared this at one level because Yes, there is a theological significance to this, obviously. Right? Eretz Yisrael is important, but we went to Galut for a reason, and there are complexities there that, on the one hand, make it more challenging to be spiritually successful, on the other hand, enable it. Right? But I think that it's more experiential, that it's validating or describing the complexity of that relationship, because balancing the reality of multiple centers of Jewish life, that each have advantages and disadvantages, both in terms of objective kedusha and in terms of just the very pragmatic facts on the ground, is very hard for us, because it's just hard to manage. Right? We know that these relationships are complicated, and Chazal are showing us this is not new, that people have this complexity, and that's part of what it means to have a global community, right? As on the one hand, to recognize the uniqueness of Eretz Yisrael, to the other hand, recognize that there are certain things in Chutz La'aretz that are unique, that give them advantages that we can learn from, and maybe even be jealous from in Eretz Yisrael. But on the other hand, right, there is something positive to having an I don't know if I want to say this, but positive to having an inferiority complex outside of Eretz Yisrael, if you believe that Eretz Yisrael is where Jews should be, right? He doesn't say that Rava picked up and made Aliyah. It just said that, like, Rava had this relationship where he's like, oh, now the people in Eretz Yisrael are going to think, and that's sort of inherent, right? So those are my, sort of thoughts, is that Chazal are doing this on purpose to describe the complexity of these. That's why I called this year Better in Bavel ? Right? Where
It's not necessarily.
meaning the Gemara is trying to tell you that these issues are gray, right? And then anybody who tells you it's obvious everyone should be in Eretz Yisrael, there's no benefit to Chutz La'aretz, there's nothing good going on in Chutz La'aretz, right? It's not true. And it's also wrong for people in Chutz La'aretz to say, well, Eretz Yisrael is very nice, but like, here I have such a good parnassus, so I can send my kids to the schools I want, and I can build the shul that I want. If I was in Eretz Yisrael, I'd be struggling, because on the one hand, legitimate question: who's better, right? The person who stays in Chutz La'aretz and is a machanech nagid, or a person who would have been a machanech in Chutz La'aretz becomes to Eretz Yisrael and becomes an electrician. I don't know, right? Who's better? I think the answer is not obvious, right? Meaning, those are trade-offs that you might want to make, right? You might say that your most important thing is to be involved in Avodas HaKodesh, or you might say that no, right? Living a normal life in Eretz Yisrael, even if that means I'm not needed as a machanech, right? Again, these types of questions are complex. They're not a right answer.
What would be the benefit of just living in Israel?
Besides, like, this mitzvah d'oraisa.
Right.
Yeah.
What? I mean, everyone thinks that it's important halachically what you call it, right? Do you call it a mitzvah? Do you call it a right?
Like, if you don't think it's a mitzvah, what is it? It's like,
I don't know. Meaning the Rambam who's in Mona is a mitzvah, right? Talks about how anyone, right? The Rambam who doesn't count a mitzvah says anyone who lives in Chutz La'aretz is if he doesn't have a god.
right.
So what value is that? So again, that's where he's. What do you mean? He writes in some of his shuvot, "I am the Rosh Hashanah Maimon who violates, whatever was 3 Yisurim every day." It's a complexity, right?
What if it's not a halachic thing? What's the benefit?
Again, it's one of those things. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, where I, in this sense, am not. If you remember, I got into a fight with this with Ellie last year, right? Where I'm not reductionist in this way. Like, I don't see a contradiction between saying it's not a formal mitzvah, but it's obviously the Ratzon HaTorah or something, right?
I'm saying, what specifically is the benefit?
I'm saying there is. No, but I'm saying, like, I don't know you need to formalize it. Meaning, for the Rambam, he doesn't think a contradiction between there not being a formal mitzvah, but it obviously being so definitional to being a Jew.
No,
that is.
I'm not saying forget halacha. There's no halacha. I agree.
What?
I agree. It doesn't have to have a formal halacha. Say what is so important?
So there's
a specific person making it.
Good. So you have different shitos, right? You could take the very reductionist approach, right, which is there are mitzvot you can mekayim in Eretz Yisrael that you can't in Chutz La'aretz, right? Then you can note that according to Chazal, it's probably more than that, right? That even the mitzvot, the regular mitzvot that you do in Chutz La'aretz, are not as valuable as they are in Eretz Yisrael. Why that's true metaphysically is hard to tell, right? You can also recognize that part of that the notion that Judaism is a religion is wrong in the Christian sense. It's not, just like Islam is not. right? It's not a private affair. It's by definition a national affair, and therefore living in the national homeland of the Jewish people is the place where you can manifest that national side of Judaism, because Judaism isn't a quote-unquote religion. It's not private.
So would it matter
right?
If Israel was founded in Uganda instead, like,
it would, because it wouldn't have, right? And then you'd have to remember, right? Even according to Ramban, right? Remember, the fact that you can only imbue Kedusha Haaretz in the place where, right? Meaning, there's, as the Rishonim say, there's Shem Eretz Yisrael and Kedusha Eretz Yisrael, right? You can only have a mitzvah to be Kovish, even according to Ramban, and imbue Kedusha into that which already has Shem Eretz Yisrael, right? It has a pre-existing definition that God chose it. Now, what value is there to God chose it and thinks that's where the Jewish people should be? Again, do you say there's a formal mitzvah? Do you say that you can be Mekayim mitzvah there? Or you just say that, like, this is part of what the ultimate scheme of being a Jew looks like? Right? And therefore, obviously, there's a value. Call it what you want. Right? That's my tendency, right? Which is it true that according to some Rishonim there's a formal mitzvah? Yes. Is it? Look, you can say, well, there's no formal mitzvah, so what value is? But I'll give you a very simple raya, okay? And you do with this what you want. The halacha on the books, nifsak, from the Gemara through Shulchan Aruch, is that if you have a couple who's married and one of the members, right, one of the spouses says, I want to move to Eretz Yisrael, they can force their spouse halachically, bring them to Beis Din and force them to move to Eretz Yisrael, even if it means leaving their big house and moving to a hovel in Eretz Yisrael. I'm not going to say that's a good idea, shalom bayis-wise, right? What? This is in the same sugya here in Ksubos, right? But that's nifsak halacha, right? So you can tell me, but it's not a formal mitzvah. Great, but I can give you a formal halacha that derives from whatever meta value it is. I don't know what you want to call it.
Well, yeah, that's, I guess,
right? And again, I give you several possibilities. All I know, this is one of those things you have to work backwards. There is a halachic nafkamina to whatever it is. If the only language you have to explain that is, it must be that the Ramban is right? Because you don't know what Ratzon HaTorah might mean, so then fine, that's a raya that the Ramban is right. If you don't, so then say, okay, I don't know what the value is, but I know there's a nafkamina, so there must be a value. I have to figure out what it is, but, there's a nafkamina, so there must be lumdus behind the nafkamina, right? Right, the nafkamina is that you're allowed to force a spouse to move to Eretz Yisrael, even to a less comfortable lifestyle, right? Like kofin, right? I don't know what to tell you, right? Like, there's a nafkamina lahalacha, there must be something there. Yeah. Again, does that mean it's a mitzvah? Does that mean there's a possibility of a kind of mitzvah? Or do you just think that it's just sort of definitional that the Jewish people exist as a national entity and the place that happens in Eretz Yisrael, and there is an incompleteness to Judaism outside of Eretz Yisrael, and therefore that has halachic weight, call it what you want. One of those is right, I don't know which one. I just know that there's a nafkamina, right? It's one of those where you have to work backwards, right? As I know the nafkamina. What the lumdus behind the nafkamina is, we can dispute. Okay. But again, if we don't get through every one of the Gemaras, lo sofa Allah, right? But I do think that, despite everything I just said, the fact that the same Gemara that can paskin that can describe all these complexities, right? It's trying to tell you that it's still not a black and white issue. There are legitimate things to say about living in Chutz La'aretz and its benefits and its difficulties, right? There is, right? The Gemara, I think, is trying. Remember, this is always what we talk about in Agadata. That, especially Agadata that weighs in on like quasi halachic issues, right? It's trying to fill out the picture and tell you like these are the halachot, but there's layers of complexity that we need you to understand. Right? And the way we can do that is by telling you stories about people who faced the same complexities that you're going to. And again, at some level, the right questions to ask is what Zev is asking, which is, well, give me the formal explanation. And at some level, the answer is, I can give you formal suggestions, but I know what the result is. Right? I know that at some level there's a benefit to living in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore, otherwise you wouldn't be able to be kofet. Right? You just wouldn't. Right? Again, call it a value to live where there's more mitzvot, a value to live where there's more kedusha. I don't know what it is. Right?
What? The place where the mission is.
Call what you want, right? Whichever one speaks to you. I know the answer. Right? Lamaisa. What the reason is, I don't know. I've given you possibilities. I don't know which one is right. Okay, so let's try to get some more stories and complicate the picture. What time is it?
9:52.
Okay, so we'll get some more in. If we don't get everything, I've given you the translation to everything, okay? Fine. So maybe let's run through a little bit of English and see if we how we get here. Okay, so look at number 9. This is towards the end of Bracha, 63.
This is just the way that you just go through the document, what?
So good. Reb Safra said, Rabbi Abba would relate when Hanina, the son of Yeshua's brother, went to the diaspora of Babylonia, he would intercalate years and establish months outside of Eretz Yisrael. Because Judaism in Eretz Yisrael has declined in the wake of the Bar Kokhba rebellion, he considered it necessary to cultivate the Jewish community in Babylonia as the center of the Jewish people. Right, so here this is a great story. Because what happened? Rabbi Hanina went, he was a Talmud in Eretz Yisrael, and he went to Chutz La'aretz to strengthen it, and he was treating Bavel as the center of Jewish life by doing Kiddush HaChodesh. Okay? What happened? The Talmidei Chacham in Eretz Yisrael got bothered. So what did they do? They sent 2 scholars after him, Rabbi Yossi ben Kefar and the grandson of Zechariah ben Kavutal. When Hanina saw them, he asked them, "Why'd you come?" They responded, "We came to learn Torah." Since he saw them standing, since he was standing in hands for the Sage of Eretz Yisrael coming to study Torah with him, right? So what happens? He said, "Oh, the Talmidim coming from Eretz Yisrael are coming to learn with me in Bavel." So what does he do? He bolsters their honor by saying, "These people are eminent scholars of our generation, and their fathers served in the temple." Okay? Later on, what happened? They start poskening, and every time he would say Asr, they would say Mutter. He would say Tameh, he would say Tahor, right? Every time. So skip down. He said to them, right? He got so annoyed at them that every time he said something, they said the opposite. He said they're worthless. And what did they say? Right? They said to him, "You've already built up our names and glorified us. You cannot now demolish." Meaning, you already wanted to build on the kavod of the Talmidei Eretz Yisrael coming to you to learn Torah. You can't now say we're worthless because we're disagreeing with you. He said to them, "Why is it when I rule something impure, you rule it pure? But when I prohibit, you permit it?" They said to him, "We do this because you intercalate the years and establish the months outside Eretz Yisrael." And they said, "Because you're usurping the power of Eretz Yisrael. We got to undermine you because you are... Right? You're trying to take the status of the Sanhedrin and use it in Bavel." He said to them, "Didn't Akiva ben Yosef also intercalate years and establish months outside Israel?" He said, "There's precedent that the biggest Talmud Chacham of the generation did this." And they replied to him, "Leave the case of Rabbi Akiva. As when he left, he did not leave behind everyone as great in Torah as he in Eretz Yisrael." So they said, "Look, that was exceptional because normally the Talmidim in Eretz Yisrael get precedence. But Rabbi Akiva was unique because there was no one as big a Talmud Chacham in Eretz Yisrael. So in that time, Bavel actually had the upper hand." So what did Reb Hanina say to them? "I also didn't leave behind anyone as great as me in Eretz Yisrael." And what do they say? "You're right, but the kids you left behind have grown into goats with horns." Meaning, you're right, but you left Talmidim, and by this point they've surpassed you. Right? So it's this complexity that... What?
And it wasn't this.
Right, no, but he's saying, you used to be the biggest Talmud Chacham, but then you left for Bavel. And in the meantime, the people you left in Eretz Yisrael became greater than you, right? And it's this complexity where they're acknowledging that there are times when Bavel can be superior, right? But that's not the natural state. And therefore, right, even the Rebbe might lose his authority to his Talmidim because the natural state is that Eretz Yisrael should have the big Talmidim Chachamim. But it's not always true, right? The story wonderfully balances it, right? Wonderfully. And he says, in the meantime, they told you, we're going to put you in Cherem if you don't listen to us. Right? That's what we were told from the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael. So, in the meantime, skipping down, everyone burst into tears. And they said, "We have no portion in the God of Israel," right? Meaning they realized, like, if they keep going with this, they are giving up on Eretz Israel, right? And they lose the Chelek in God. You can't just turn Bavel into the Iker. That doesn't work. And why? What's the pasuk? And then they said, why the Talmidim Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael? Why were they so invested in undermining Chutz La'aretz as the center of Torah? Ki mitzion teitzei Torah dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. Because Torah has to come from Eretz Yisrael. Right? But it's this complexity, because in the same Gemara that says, this is how it should be, it acknowledges sometimes it isn't. Right? It's an unnatural state. That doesn't mean it doesn't always happen. Right? It's saying, you're right. in the time of Rabbi Kiva, we're Modeh. Chutz La'aretz was better. But that's really not ideal. And therefore, once you leave, even your Talmidim will put you on Cherem, if that's what it takes to establish that Eretz Yisrael is the proper one. Right? It's perfectly capturing to this complexity. Okay, what time is it? I think we're going to... What?
It's 9:56.
Okay, we still have a little bit of time. So look at the next Gemara. And you see this even more. Right? Abaye said that one of the inhabitants of Eretz Yisrael is superior to two of us in Bavel. And Rava said, one of us in Bavel, when he ascends to Eretz Yisrael, is superior to two people born and raised in Eretz Yisrael. So this is the Gemara I'll end on. Because this is like the most Oleg Gemara ever. Right? This is the complexity. What does Abaye say? In Israeli is better than two chutznikim. And what does Rava retort? But in Oleh is better than two sabras. Right? Right, that's what he says, right? This is a Gemara, right? This is not like, right? I'm telling you, this is Mamish and Gemara. This is not like what? I'm saying this is Mamish and Gemara. Right? Abaye says, the pinnacle of like greatness is Israelis, and Rava says, no. Pinnacle of greatness is Olim, right? Like, do you understand how it's capturing this complexity? Like, on the one hand, it's better to be in Eretz Yisrael, but on the other hand, people come from Chutz La'aretz and bring everything Chutz La'aretz has and bring it to Eretz Yisrael. What they can do, right? That is like, right? This is like, Ole 101, right? We have like this weird thing. On the one hand, we feel inferior because we weren't born here. We have weird accents. The other hand, we're like, but we were Moser Nefesh to come here and we bring the best of our community. like this is Mamish the Gemara. Okay, there's a few more stories that I gave you here, pretty famous ones. Hillel coming from Bavel to the Bnei B'Teira. But again, you can read those Gemaras, and like I said, what I want you to think in these Gemaras is that I think the Gemara is trying to L'chatchila paint a picture for you of this very complicated relationship we have when there's two centers of Jewish people, Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael, recognizing each has its strengths and weaknesses, and that we constantly go back and forth between acknowledging our weaknesses and our strengths. Right? And it's that constant superiority and inferiority that Dafka drives the dynamic but often tense relationship between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, which is, I think, inherent in what? Yeah, but what the Gemara is doing is acknowledging this, right, and saying yes, there is a certain natural state where Eretz Yisrael should be better, but Chutz La'aretz has certain advantages, and therefore sometimes it has the upper hand, and sometimes Dafka, the people who can bridge the two worlds, like Olim, right, have the upper hand, because then you have a little bit of both, right? And it's recognizing all of the layers that exist in this. Okay, I mean, like I said, as I think you end your year, and some of you going back permanently, some of you going back this summer, some of you aren't going back at all, right? To realize that Dafka, if nothing else, if you learn nothing else from me in a year or 2 years in your case, that nothing is ever black and white, and that the Gemara and Halacha always want you to see nuance and recognize levels of gray and embrace that and try to balance it, and not... When you're going back to Chutz La'aretz, it's very important to maintain that gray, just like you have in the Gemara. Not to say, just everything in Chutz La'aretz is valueless, and also not to say, Eretz Yisrael has nothing to offer that Chutz La'aretz doesn't. Like, neither of those are true. Right? Eretz Yisrael is clearly unique, and there's clearly unique things to Chutz La'aretz, and we maintain a complicated relationship. And that's the way it's always been. That's the way it always, needs to be at some level, and to maintain a healthy relationship is to acknowledge the advantages of the other community, the challenges of the other community, and to allow that creative tension to drive our respective and joint communities forward. And I think the Gemara is trying to paint that picture through these personalities. We started with Ula, who is sort of a microcosm of this in himself. But we've seen that it really is expanded. The Gemara constantly ponders this through its narratives. And I think, at least for me, that always gives me a little bit of perspective on trying to in my mind, sort of process the ways in which our communities interact and how those interactions change as the situations on the ground change. And like I said, with the last few months, the balance of power in so many ways has shifted. that recognizing that even in the time of Chazal, these things were always dynamic, and that they found ways of recognizing that and responding to change, at least gives me a little bit of tools, Torah tools, to process it as things continue to shift. So, if nothing else, Agadata isn't as black and white as Gemara, as halachic Gemara is, but I think it does give you the toolbox to deal with gray. So, shkoyach for a fun year of Agadata.